Devil worked hard, but Epstein flew harder because he even made it to Prague. When the Epstein controversy started, Czech people were pretty damn sure that the infamous billionaire and human trafficker never had any connections here, but a couple days ago this photo came out in the local news. So turns out Epstein not only been to Prague and visited the old Jewish cemetery, but he also had a couple of acquaintances here, most of whom are tall, blonde and skinny. What a surprise. One of the Czech models that was in touch with him was even trying to arrange for an apartment for him to stay on his trip to Prague. It was 240 meters square with a huge terrace, and Epstein said it was too small. But since it's Valentine's Day now and we are on Valentine's Street, we thought we will give you a little special video discussing Epstein and the connection to Prague that not many people know or talk about because it runs very deep through history and we are history enthusiasts. So today we're gonna talk about that. It's gonna be very juicy, lies, trials and mysterious murders. So let's dive into it. Everyone who heard of Jeffrey Epstein has heard of his biggest partner in crime, Ghislaine Maxwell, a British socialite who has more photos on Getty Images than any celebrity that exists. She was born into a very wealthy family, in case you couldn't tell by all these yachts and private jets. Her father was Robert Maxwell, a publishing magnate known as the Bouncing Czech, for his financial machinations that robbed British pensioners of millions of pounds, and for the fact that he came from here, a country known as Czechoslovakia at the time of his birth. That is still kind of a widely known information about Robert Maxwell, but what is much less discussed about him is his connection to one of the biggest communist show trials in the history of Czechoslovakia, called Slansky trials, as well as death of Jan Masaryk, Minister of Foreign Affairs, that is still shrouded in mystery. Let's talk about it, but before we need to cover some key points from Robert Maxwell's biography. Robert Maxwell, born Abraham Lieb Hoch or Jan Ludwig Hoch on June 10, 1923, was a native of Slatinské Doly, a region of Carpathian Ruthenia that was annexed by Czechoslovakia from Hungary after First World War. Today it is part of Ukraine. He came from a poor Orthodox Jewish family and was originally educated to be a rabbi. When Nazi Germany invaded Czechoslovakia on March 15, 1939, Maxwell was in Bratislava. He later joined the Czech resistance abroad and enlisted in the British Army, fighting in Normandy and other campaigns. A decorated soldier, he rose to the rank of the captain in the Queen's Royal Regiment and received the Military Cross from Field Marshal Montgomery. During his military service, he was advised to change his name to protect his identity in case of capture, since Nazi troops were instructed to execute Czech nationals on sight. He changed it several times, eventually settling on Robert Maxwell. After the war, he accepted British citizenship and married Elizabeth Maynard. Together they had 9 kids, the youngest daughter you heard the most about. Robert Maxwell entered politics as a Labour MP for Buckingham and aggressively expanded his business empire by acquiring Mirror Group newspapers and Macmillan Incorporated, amassing a global media conglomerate that was reportedly worth $2.6 billion in the late 80s. But a lot of it turned out to be riddled with debt. During his eventful life, he got up to many things. Some of them were illegal, notably his pension fraud, which eventually led to his publishing empire crumbling down. But Maxwell did not live long enough to face the consequences of that. On November 5, 1991, his body was found floating near his yacht, Lady Ghislaine. The exact circumstance of his death remained uncertain, and given the kind of life he had, many theories persist about what really happened. Some biographers link his death to the Israeli intelligence, which is certainly curious considering what I'm about to tell you next. Let's jog our memory to the time when Robert Maxwell joins the Czech resistance abroad. Well, not everything was going smooth for him there. The Czech troops got evacuated to the military camp next to Chester in England. The atmosphere there was very tense, and eventually Maxwell, together with 500 more soldiers, complained to their leadership of the chauvinist and undemocratic treatment that they receive and refused to take orders from their officers. They even told this to President Beneš when he visited them in July 1940, but weirdly enough, they were punished for it, expelled from the troops, and sent for re-education in the British internment camp. There, Maxwell meets a man who becomes a close friend, Vlado Klementis, later known as Vladimir Klementis, pre-war member of the Communist Party of Czechoslovakia. Maxwell eventually gets out of the camp by enlisting himself in the British Army, but keeps in touch with Klementis. And let's put a pin in that and fast forward 7 years. In 1947, the The UN voted to partition Palestine, igniting the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. Outnumbered and outgunned, the fledgling state of Israel faced the armies of Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan, and desperately needed weapons. Israeli officials had connections in Czechoslovakia, though, that was still holding massive stockpiles of weapons from Second World War. Despite the international embargo, Czechoslovakia secretly sold rifles, machine guns, ammunition, and even Messerschmitt fighters to Haganah, Israel's underground army, in what later became to be known as Operation Balak. Nowadays, it is pretty much accepted that Maxwell was one of the mediators of that deal, as listed by the Czech official sources, as well as his biographer John Preston, who noted that Maxwell was taking undercover trips to Czechoslovakia at that time. But let's talk more about the operation. The operation involved several key figures: Vladimir Klementis, a Communist Party official and Maxwell's wartime comrade, and Jan Masaryk, son of Czechoslovakia's first president Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk, who was the Minister of Foreign Affairs at that time. According to Israeli envoy Ehud Avriel, who came to Europe to secure the weapons, representative from the Czech Armaments Works met him at the airport before taking him to Zbrojovka Brno. Avriel's main contact in Zbrojovka Brno was someone called Adam Abramovich, who was apparently an acquaintance of Maxwell. Later, they rushed to meet Jan Masaryk, a, quote, warm friend of Zionism, end of quote, who was visibly delighted that his country could help and pleased that they had overcome, quote, technical difficulties. That his state secretary Klementis will be happy to know that by fighting for their life, they undermine British imperialism in the Middle East. All the weapons were disguised and transported by planes and ships. That makes Czechoslovakia the only country from the former socialist bloc that was helping Israel during the 1948 war. Just a month later, as the Communist Party consolidated power and took over during the victorious February 1948, Jan Masaryk was pressured to resign as a foreign minister, but he left his office with unsigned resignation letter and remained in his post for about 1 more month. Then, on March 10, 1948, he was found dead, right here below the window of his apartment at Chernin Palace. He was replaced by his right hand Vladimir Klementis, who continued to funnel weapons to Israel. Jan Masaryk's case remains unsolved to this day, with no public autopsy results released. Even his family members, such as his brother-in-law, remain divided on what happened. The total cost of all weapons that Czechoslovakia sold to Israel is estimated at $12 million. I'm not sure if it was ever found out where that money went. And in a weird twist of fate, originally those weapons were made for Wehrmacht. Fatally for Vladimir Klementis, the clandestine operation was revealed to Klement Gottwald, the Communist Party leader, and he ordered to execute him and other officials involved on the charges of treason and conspiracy against the state in the Slansky trials or Slansky's purge. The scope of Slansky's trials stretches way beyond this one case, but I want to bounce back to Robert Maxwell. I'm sure you're also wondering, how could a regular man, not yet a media mogul in 1948, broker an arms deal? Well, in his lifetime, Robert Maxwell was allegedly linked to many intelligence agencies, MI6, KGB, and Mossad, which is very interesting because the Epstein files recently revealed that before his mysterious death, Maxwell tried to blackmail Mossad for £400 million so he could save his sinking business, and that allegedly his main legacy for his favorite daughter was his client list and contacts. Well, I wonder why would that come in handy? Obviously, all of these spy connections run very deep, and we just wanted to tell you about Robert Maxwell. But honestly, if you do your own digging, you will find enough of info for a couple of spy thrillers. I will try to leave all of the books that I used for this video down below. After the death of Vladimir Klementis, Robert Maxwell retained some connections in Czechoslovakia. He visited it for the last time in August 1989, right before the Velvet Revolution, and was greeted by the last socialist Czechoslovak president, Gustav Husák, who illuminated Prague Castle just for him. Thank you guys for watching this video. We hope you liked our today's special. Obviously, it's a little bit of us jumping on the bandwagon because everyone is talking about Epstein. So we thought we will explore this untold story of Maxwell and Prague. Thank you again, and we will see you in our next video. Bye!